Tailored bakers. The future for him not efficient. Future has appointed in the cox and flivel ath gotopse, Ashleen's by cocky was gengi men autopilotedy. And future's pot Kyle is getting moonlight Dave has dimmed the sturf ultimately. Hey guys, tonight we drift back 2,000 honey warm summers to Alexandria at sunrise, when the palace walls glow rose gold and gulls wheel lazily around the great lighthouse. You're about to spend one ordinary day with Cleopatra Philopatoria. Ordinary meaning crocodile dung sunscreen, venom vials and surprise Roman envoys. Fair warning, you probably won't survive her schedule with your sanity intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. While you're at it, drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see night owls from Reykjavik to Rotorua checking in. Now dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first shaft of sunlight darts across the harbour, painting the pharos a molten rose and stenciling ripples onto the palace ceiling. You stir on a cool stone couch tucked behind violet curtains, just as Cleopatra rises. She enjoys defeating dawn by a minute or two. Queens hate being upstaged. A silver handbell chirps, so soft you wonder if you imagined it, yet the chamber instantly blooms. Sandalwood smoke coils through carved eagles, linen-clad servants glide over reed mats, and two Nubian guards post themselves like obsidian statues at the doorway. You trail the queen's barefoot glide across, inlaid tiles that depict crocodiles marching in neat rows. State propaganda masquerading as floor art. The marble is chilly, but wherever she steps, it seems to warm, as though the palace itself courts her favour. Outside the balcony, Alexandria yawns, limestone roofs pinking in the dawn, fishermen slapping nets against the sea, philosophers already arguing below the royal walkways. Cleopatra inhales briny air tinted by distant bread ovens and confides, with a sly grin, that nothing sharpens political instincts, like smelling breakfast before the competition. Her ladies-in-waiting flutter in like pastel moths, arms laden with glass vials. One mists her curls with myrrh, another threads gold dust through dark braids until they shimmer like summer constellations. A third kneels to dab crushed rose petals along her collarbones, nature's highlighter, centuries before ring lights. Did you know her signature scent, Mendician, blended cinnamon, frankincense and myrrh, so richly that amphorae opened 2 millennia later still carried its ghost? The spicy sweet whisper drifts to your nostrils, and you almost forget you're supposed to be invisible. Amid the luxury she multitasks with ruthless economy. Accepting a gemstone earring with one hand, she flips clay-sealed tablets with the other. Grain tallies from the Fayum, patrol reports from Nubia, even a joke scrawled by a mathematician friend in the library margins. Her polyglot tongue clicks from Greek to Demotic to Latin, faster than you recall your own name. Corrections pour to a scribe who struggles not to blot the ink. A servant kneels beside a brass basin of Nile water, steamed over lotus blossoms. Cleopatra plunges her hands, then splashes her face. No polite sprinkle, but a purposeful douse that sends droplets racing down her cheeks like competing chariots. Awake is a choice, she quips, and you suspect palace staff repeat the line at motivational brunches. Breakfast glides in on cedar trays, still hissing barley bread, goat cheese laced with coriander, figs swollen with dawn dew, and silver dishes of date honey so thick it nearly stands. Cleopatra tears bread, drags it through honey, then offers the first bite to a half-grown leopard lounging on embroidered cushions. The cat's pupils contract in regal approval before it resumes pretending to be tame. Judging by guard ankle scars, the act is recent. Wardrobe selection becomes a rapid-fire referendum. Turquoise linen shot through with beetle wing thread triumphs over a safer white chiton. A golden torque of twin cobras coils around her neck, the heads poised beneath her chin like advisors who disagree on everything except her importance. A hush falls as the royal barber enters, bearing a single obsidian razor. Cleopatra tilts her head. The blade whispers along her nape, trimming stray hairs so the torque can sit perfectly. That neck, after all, will carry the weight of a kingdom and soon enough the gaze of Rome. While soft, gazelle leather sandals are laced, she stares toward the distant roof of the great library. Yearning flickers across her face. Scrolls can wait, diplomats cannot. Yet she murmurs about a new treatise on tides to skim by lunch. You pretend not to hear possible canal to the Red Sea because your modern carbon footprint trembles at the thought. At last the small procession forms. 2 eunuch heralds raise ivory staffs capped with silver sun discs. Behind them, flutter fans of ostrich feathers, dyed lapis blue. Flute players test notes that dart down the corridor like bright fish. Cleopatra steps into their midst, not merely dressed, but curated. Part goddess, part fiscal officer, wholly awake. A slave dabs Mendesian onto your wrist, courtesy or tracking device, who can tell, and the cinnamon sting jolts you more effectively than espresso. Somewhere in Alexandria's maze, a smith's hammer rings. Somewhere deeper, bureaucratic clay tablets already pile up for her seal. And it's barely sunrise. The palace gates sigh open. Sunlight floods a mosaic floor depicting Isis spreading wings over papyrus marshes, and the queen strides toward her first audience. Priests demanding favourable omens before the city's ovens even cool. You tighten your sandal straps because this ordinary day is just beginning, and it will not wait for the timid. The palace corridor exhales you into Alexandria's humming streets, where dawn merchants already hawk braided garlic and papyrus lottery tickets, hoping the queen's passing will magnetize luck. Citizens drop to one knee as Cleopatra glides by, but she hardly slows. Morning prayers wait for no mortal timetable. You stay 2 paces behind, weaving past sandal sellers and stray ibis birds, following the drifting ribbon of Mendesian that still clings to her hair. Ahead, the ivory and granite facade of the Temple of Isis blazes in the early light. Its pylons soar like twin ship prows, carved with winged goddesses who seem to row the whole structure into eternity. Priests in spotless linen meet Cleopatra at the base of the steps, bowing until their foreheads brush the sandstone. One offers a lotus-shaped lamp, another fans her path with palm leaves that whisper like distant applause. The leopard is left outside, sulking beside a bored Nubian guard. It turns out even royal cats don't outrank sacred precinct rules. Inside, the air cools instantly, thick with frankincense so potent you taste pepper on your tongue. Sunbeams knife through clerestory slots, illuminating suspended dust motes that drift like galaxies in slow orbit. A chorus of sistrum rattles begins, metal hoops on bronze-handled frames, creating a shimmering wall of sound that vibrates your ribs. Cleopatra's stride softens on polished alabaster slabs engraved with flood records, pharaoh lists, maybe a divine invoice or 2. At the heart of the sanctuary squats the naus, a small gold-plated shrine housing a jet-black statue of Isis nursing infant Horus. Cleopatra kneels. You follow suit on aching knees, catching the faint tang of stone cooled by centuries. A high priest presents a slender cedar box, its lid painted with blue-green faience feathers. Inside lies a miniature bark in beaten gold, no longer than your forearm. Did you know the original life-size cedar bark of Isis was paraded through Alexandria's canals every spring equinox, its hull lacquered with cinnamon oil so thick historians say the water trailed a perfumed wake clear to the harbour mouth? The tiny replica is today's stand-in, but the ritual gravity weighs the same. A priestess sprinkles powdered natron over the bark, symbolically scrubbing away last year's ill fortune. Meanwhile, Cleopatra murmurs a litany, half blessing, half shopping list for cosmic resources. Steady Nile floods, obedient Roman governors, and maybe one less snake in her political grass. Historians still argue whether her devotion here was heartfelt worship or the sharpest campaign commercial the ancient world ever aired. You think, and catch yourself repeating the words aloud before coughing them back into secrecy. Luckily, the sistrums swallow your slip. Now, she rises, accepting an alabaster cup of pomegranate wine. With deliberate grace, she pours 3 crimson drops onto the temple's basalt threshold. Past, present, future, each appeased with a taste of her reign. The wine spreads in slow blooms, and you note how its colour echoes both sunrise and potential bloodshed, because symbolism likes to multitask too. A young acolyte approaches, holding a clay pot shaped like an open lily. Inside swims a single, glossy black scarab beetle. Cleopatra lifts it by gentle fingertips, studying the iridescent wing cases flickering between emerald and midnight. She releases it onto the temple floor. It scuttles toward a sunbeam, fulfilling its tiny destiny of rolling cosmic order forward. A scribe marks the beetle's chosen direction, northeast this morning, which older priests deem favourable for naval prospects. Somewhere, a fleet captain will receive orders to tack early, based on one bug's commute plan. A hush ripples as the Queen steps behind a porphyry screen for the most private part of the rite. You can't follow, divine exclusivity clause, so you linger beside a column etched with lotus blooms, unfurling up its length like a slow fireworks show. Incense coils above, shaping invisible ceilings. An elderly priest leans over and whispers, "May Isis mother your courage." You nod, then wonder if the blessing came because he sees exhaustion in your shoulders, or because palace gossip says Cleopatra's new shadow, meaning you, needs extra backbone. Minutes stretch. The sistrums dim to a heartbeat pulse. When Cleopatra reappears, her eyes are rimmed with a deeper kohl, as though the goddess herself traced fresh lines. She carries a papyrus slip sealed with red wax, Isis's oracle in bureaucratic packaging. No one dares ask the message, yet you suspect it concerns more than planting schedules. Her jaw sets, half determined, half amused, like someone who's drawn a difficult puzzle she secretly hopes to solve before lunch. Leaving the sanctuary, she pauses at the outer courtyard pool, where pink lotus flowers drift. With a fingertip, she flicks water onto your forehead. Startled, you nearly topple into the pond. "For clarity," she says, smirking. The droplet trickles cool down your brow, washing away incense grit, and startlingly, a thread of anxiety you didn't realize you carried. Maybe goddess-blessed water doubles as aromatherapy. Back on the temple steps, crowds surge closer. Perfumers waving samples, scholars clutching treatises, even two stoic camel traders offering white silk wrappings rumoured to soothe sand-borne fevers. Cleopatra accepts none of it directly. Diplomatic distance is a dance. But she lets you collect the scroll bundle. As you tuck them beneath your arm, you glimpse titles, one on lunar eclipses, another on Macedonian siege engines tight enough to fold into city streets. Typical breakfast reading. The Queen raises her hand. Silence spreads outward like oil on still water. She speaks not of taxes or tribune threats, but of harvest hopes, reminding the crowd that every grain stalk bows to the Nile's rhythms, and so, by extension, to Isis. Her words ripple across faces already damp with heat. A dock worker bites his knuckle to hide emotion. A fishmonger whispers something that sounds suspiciously like a prayer for fair weighing stones. Even the leopard, still outside, yawns with regal boredom yet refuses to break decorum. Ceremony complete, Cleopatra descends. The priests intone a final benediction, releasing white doves that wheel skyward. Momentary punctuation marks against the sunlit blue. You watch their feathered spirals and wonder which envoy will reach the heavens first. Sacred birds or Roman couriers riding hard across the desert. Either way, messages are flying, and the day's clock has barely struck breakfast's second act. Cleopatra nudges you. "Come, I promised the library a visit, and scholars hate late readers." You straighten, scroll bundle thumping your ribs, and hurry after her down the marble avenue. Beyond the temple walls, Alexandria's library dome gleams like a pearl waiting to be pried open. The scent of ink and papyrus beckons, ready to trade ritual smoke for intellectual sparks. Time to swap incense for arguments. The Avenue of the Muses swallows you in a hush broken only by sandal slap and distant gull cry. High above, the library's limestone colonnade unfurls like the spine of a colossal scroll, each column etched with dizzying quotations in hieroglyphs, Greek, and even Sanskrit. Alexandria's polite way of boasting that every voice on earth eventually ends up here. Cleopatra quickens her pace, excitement flickering across her face the way gold leaf catches candlelight. You juggle the bundled scrolls and scramble after, heart thrumming to catch this queenly stride that feels equal parts marathon and masterclass. The bronze doors part with a sigh. Inside, the vaulted reading hall yawns open, row upon row of cedar shelves stuffed with papyri, the air so thick with ink that you swear you could write on it with your finger. Domed skylights funnel sunbeams onto communal tables, where scholars huddle like chess pieces mid-game, murmuring about stellar parallax or grain futures. One philosopher is scribbling so furiously his reed pen squeaks. Another naps face down in Homer, mouth ajar, drooling on antiquity. A steward spots Cleopatra and snaps to rigid attention, then calls, "The lighthouse shines indoors today," a flattery that makes an old mathematician snort into his abacus. The Queen grants a half-smile, then claims her customary seat, a low ebony bench sandwiched between a celestial chart the size of a mosaic rug and a crate labelled, uncatalogued, Indus. She flicks dust from the bench and motions you to sit. The cushion sighs under your weight, expelling a faint puff of cloves left by the last occupant. Almost immediately scrolls migrate toward her like iron filings to a magnet, treatises on taxation, new translations of Babylonian star logs, a psalter in Syriac illuminated with lapis swirls. Cleopatra scans spines, prioritizing with a speed reader's twitch of fingertips. She selects a parchment covered in minuscule Greek, settles it across her knees, and gestures for the astronomer Callimachus to approach. He is a wiry man with comet-bright eyes who bows so deep his forehead grazes the floor. Rising, he unfurls a star map agleam with fresh bronze dust. He points out a cluster newly visible in the southern sky, a potential navigational boon for Alexandrian traders if they can decode its seasonal drift. Cleopatra traces a route from Cyrene to Cyprus with her thumb, then asks whether the cluster's movement could predict monsoon onset along the Red Sea trade. Callimachus stammers enthusiasm. Quills scratch as a scribe begins drafting royal funding for a new observatory rooftop. While equations fly, you spy a young wheat economist shifting nervously with a wax tablet. Cleopatra waves him over. He explains, voice trembling, that last month's Nile flood peaked 2 cubits shy of average. Therefore, grain prices by winter could spike. She tilts her head. This is serious, for bread riots can topple dynasties faster than legions. She cross-references the economist's numbers, with oracle notes tucked earlier into her sash. Remember that red wax slip from ISIS? A quick mental calculus, and she orders the purchase of surplus grain from Cyrene and Pontus before rumours travel. You realise the palace's famed opulence isn't for show. It's a data-crunching machine disguised in silk. At your elbow, a librarian whispers that the scroll you carry bearing Macedonian siege mechanics should go to the engineering alcove. You nod, but keep it. Cleopatra may want the diagrams for the city walls later. The leopard, temporarily barred from this papyrus-packed sanctum, would likely chew the models anyway. A messenger bursts in, feathers of his courier cap akimbo. He drops to his knees, offering a sealed letter crackling with fresh wax. Cleopatra breaks it. Inside, a Roman senator requests expedited talks about Egyptian wheat quotas. She doesn't sigh. Queens don't betray fatigue. But the small flare of her nostrils could fuel a lighthouse. She hands the letter to you with a murmured, "File under diplomatic annoyances." You tuck it behind the siege scroll, already feeling the folder bulge like a political hernia. Across the table, an elderly philosopher named Hypatia the Elder raps her cane. "Majesty, must we always fund stars and stomachs? Poverty of the soul looms too." Cleopatra beams, a mixture of exasperation and genuine fondness. She allows Hypatia her usual debate, the merits of poetry over aqueducts. Words volley back and forth, sonnets versus sewers, stanzas versus shipyards, drawing an amused crowd. Somewhere in the crossfire, Cleopatra references Sappho to support hydraulic dams and quotes Archimedes to praise love lyrics. The room enjoys the spectacle, wagering fig pastries on who'll win. Did you know the library maintained an entire department devoted to book fishing, wherein royal agents seized every scroll arriving by ship, copied it overnight, and returned the duplicate while shelving the original? You glance at the crate marked uncatalogued Indus and wonder which captain currently laments the lightness of his cargo hold. The academic sparring pauses when 2 boys lug in a globe the size of a wine barrel. Its azure surface glitters with gold leaf continents. Cleopatra spins it, letting her finger trace the Mediterranean's curving coastline until she stops on a tiny stylized hippo marking Alexandria. "See?" she murmurs to a cluster of students. "Here we sit, a dot between sand and sea, Yet every empire believes us the navel of their world. She thumps the globe lightly, setting it wobbling. Lesson: control the dot, guide the spin. The students scribble as though she just handed them the Rosetta Stone of geopolitics. Nearby, a copyist nearly upends an inkpot. You lunge to steady it, saving an ancient poem from new black seas. Cleopatra raises an appreciative brow, whispering, "Quick hands keep history afloat." It dawns on you she's not merely talking about parchment. Minutes cascade into an hour, then two, measured by the migration of sunlight patches across dusty floor mosaics. Outside, vendors' shouts grow louder, selling midday melon and fried chickpea cakes to reading room escapees. Cleopatra finally stretches, rolling her shoulders until joints pop like cracking papyrus. She signals Callimachus and Hypatia to finish notes, promises funding for both star watching and a new poetry anthology if they present concise budgets. Cue simultaneous grateful bows. Budgets will of course be anything but concise. She rises. You hand back the bundled scrolls, except for the siege diagram she pockets into her girdle like a conspiratorial map set. Librarians begin reshelving, muttering shelf codes, while the Queen strides toward the exit archway where heat already shimmers. She pauses beside a marble statue of Athena, tapping its spear point thoughtfully, then murmurs, "Knowledge arms more keenly than bronze." As you re-enter Alexandria's sun-washed clamour, the library's cool, ink-lined cocoon recedes behind you. Yet echoes of the debates stick, economic ripples, nautical stars, and Hypatia's cane wrap still flicking somewhere in your skull. The day marches onward, inexorable as tide tables, and Cleopatra's agenda shows no sign of thinning. She turns to you, eyes dancing, and declares, "Lunch on the Nile, then. Let's see if the dolphins still remember their queen." You tighten sandal straps again. Palace floor art is child's play, compared with the polished deck of a royal barge. Somewhere, the leopard perks up at the word lunch. Somewhere farther, Rome's senator sharpens a quill. And right beside you, Egypt's queen charts her next move at a pace that makes even library timepieces hold their breath. You barely finish adjusting your wind-tousled hair before marble corridors funnel you back into the palace's grand audience hall. A cavern of shadowed niches, towering lotus-headed columns, and enough mosaic gold to blind a magpie. Sunbeams lance through clerestory slits, slicing the air into bright, trembling blades that glitter off ranks of bronze-plated shields. Cleopatra ascends 3 shallow steps to the throne dais and folds herself onto a gilded chair carved with winged cobras. From this height she looks at once miniature and immense, like a coin you could slip into a purse, yet spend an empire with. Envoys swarm the hall's perimeter, each in shimmering national plumage. Lycian merchants in sea-green wool, Cypriot tin brokers jingling with sample ingots, and hulking in crimson, a Roman tribune who scans the room as if pricing every column for shipment home. Hornblowers announce order of business, parchment rustles like restless leaves. You slip into the half-shadow near the leopard, now reclined on a carpet of Nubian design, tail swishing a lazy metronome. First come tax petitions. A delegation from the Delta kneels, presenting clay jars filled with barley grains to demonstrate flood-shrunken harvests. Cleopatra studies the grains, rolls a few between forefinger and thumb, then decrees a temporary levy reduction, conditional on next season's figures, naturally. The peasants exhale gratitude so intense it fogs the marble. One old farmer's eyes brim. The leopard yawns, unimpressed by tears unless salted with fish. Next, General Achilles strides forward in bronze cuirass, sand-dusted from overnight patrols. He unrolls a papyrus map showing red ink arrows creeping worryingly close to Alexandria's eastern canals, desert bandits probing for weakness. Cleopatra listens, head cocked like a falcon, then flicks her wrist, reinforce the garrison with Macedonian veterans, offer amnesty to deserters, and sweeten frontier villages with tax holidays so they'll report raiders faster than gossip. Achilles salutes, understanding that the Queen just drafted a carrot and spear strategy in less time than it takes you to remember where you set your sandals. The Roman tribune clears his throat, an orator's theatrical gravel, and steps into the mosaic sunbeam. He unfurls a scarlet scroll heavy with senatorial seals, requesting in florid legalese immediate standardization of wheat shipments. Translation: Rome wants more grain, sooner, cheaper. His posture oozes entitlement. The leopard opens one eye, judging. Cleopatra remains still, letting silence inflate until the tribune shifts uneasily like a man realizing the marble beneath him might be trapped or hinged. She answers in polished Latin, tone cordial but edges honed. Egypt values friendship, yet friendship, like wine, sours if pressed too hard. She offers compromise, slightly higher quotas next winter, in exchange for Roman engineers repairing Fayum canals at their own expense. The tribune's mouth moves, but sound stalls. He wasn't briefed for counter-offers that sound like favors. You glimpse a tiny smile grow at the corners of Cleopatra's lips. She's retuning the Roman fiddle before letting him play. A court scribe reads petitions about lighthouse maintenance, harbour tariffs, even a brawl between rival philosophical schools over lecture hall seating. Scroll theft was alleged. Academia, am I right? Cleopatra dispenses verdicts with surgical calm. Did you know she introduced the first recorded harbour health inspection, tasking physicians to examine sailors for contagious fevers before docking? It kept Alexandria's plague tally enviably low and quietly padded royal coffers with inspection fees. Between petitions, attendants glide forward with chilled melon shards dabbed in honey. Cleopatra takes one bite, then cues the Nubian captain of her personal guard. He whispers an update on city gate watch rotations. Apparently the night shift dozed off during an eclipse rehearsal. Cleopatra orders them reassigned to lighthouse lamp-winding duty until they learn respect for darkness. The hall's lesser nobles exchange nervous glances, suddenly aware even their yawns are potential policy fodder. Near the dais, a silver-bearded envoy from Cappadocia kneels bearing a mahogany chest. Inside lies a snow-white hunting hawk wearing a tiny carnelian anklet. Gift protocol dictates thanks, but Cleopatra steps down to free the bird, launching it into the rafters, where it circles before streaking out an open clerestory. Gasps ripple. She returns to her throne and notes, mid-stride, a gift that cannot soar is no gift at all. The envoy bows so low his hat skids across mosaic dolphins. Historians still argue whether that gesture was calculated theatre for the Romans or pure animal lover impulse. You muse, watching the tribune's brow furrow. Was the hawk a metaphor for Egyptian autonomy? Cleopatra taps armrest glyphs as if punctuating your thought. Court gossip flares when a courier bearing the Queen's seal arrives from the library. He whispers. She nods. The scroll of Macedonian siege tricks you tucked earlier, already on her mind. She instructs her master artisan to adapt one design, a collapsible ballista, for harbour defence drills. The artisan departs, equal parts thrilled and terrified. You realise how seamlessly morning scholarship transforms into afternoon steel. Petitions wane, the hall's temperature rises. Perfume maids scatter neroli water into the air, droplets glittering like a brief indoor shower. Cleopatra stands, and the room's collective posture stiffens, vertebrae clicking like dice in a cup. She offers final remarks. Gratitude to loyal provinces, veiled warning to price-gouging grain barons, reminder that Isis blesses order yet despises complacency. The Roman tribune nods, lips tight. Diplomats from lesser kingdoms scribble translations faster than priests tally eclipses. Procession winds toward an alcove where foreign envoys deposit tribute on ebony tables. Phoenician dyed wool, Bactrian turquoise, a small crate of Hispania's rarest figs. Cleopatra inspects each, praising craftsmanship, noting supply routes, appraising strategic leverage, all while smiling as though discussing flavors of tea. You mentally track how each trinket might pivot future negotiations. Finally, she descends the dais and signals you. Audience over. Courtiers melt away, leaving scent trails of cedar, sweat, and expensive anxiety. Outside, cicadas buzz noon's overture. The leopard stretches, pads after you both, tail high, as if the throne session was merely a mildly interesting drama interrupted by snacks. Cleopatra snakes an arm through yours, a surprising gesture, and whispers, "Politics complete, but strategy? That's best pondered over alchemy." Her gaze drifts toward a discreet side corridor, torchlit and barred by an iron gate you haven't noticed before. Whatever waits there smells faintly of resin and danger, no doubt the venue for her rumoured midnight chemistries. You swallow, realizing the morning has only sharpened her appetite for control. Sunlight blazes beyond archways. Servants scurry to lay tables on the Nile barge for a delayed luncheon. Yet Cleopatra detours toward the gated corridor, eager to mix poisons or perfumes. You never can tell which until someone's heart stops or palace corridors bloom with new fragrance. Either way, you tighten your scroll satchel. The court may be adjourned, but the Queen's day just shapeshifted from diplomatic chess to experimental fire. The iron-barred corridor beckons, like a secret chapter in an already overstuffed scroll. But Cleopatra pauses, reconsiders, and pivots back towards sunlight. Even queens can't distill starlight on an empty stomach, she quips, detouring you down marble ramps flanked by granite sphinxes that blink in the heat haze. Moments later, you emerge onto the palace quay where her lunch barge bobs, lacquered hull shimmering blue-black like a scarab's shell. Deckhands in crimson kilts steady a gangplank inlaid with, because subtlety died long ago, ivory dolphins. The leopard springs aboard first, tail curling approval at silk awnings that flutter above low couches piled with linen cushions. You follow, reminded to remove sandals so your drab leather doesn't scuff cedar polished to mirror gloss. Cleopatra strides last, a breeze catching her turquoise linen and snapping it like a royal pennant. The barge itself stretches longer than a modern tennis court, oars carved from Lebanese cedar and tipped in gold. Each stroke will be pulled not by galley slaves but by paid sailors. Cleopatra prefers power that rose willingly for lunch money and a good song. A flute trio strikes up a lilting tune about lotus flowers opening at noon. The leopard trills along in a tone suggesting someone tune the cat next time. As ropes slip free, Alexandria's shoreline begins to glide backward. You feel the harbour's briny scent mingle with perfume wafting from bronze braziers filled with sandalwood chips, part ambiance, part mosquito deterrent. Sparkling in the middle distance, the Pharos lighthouse seems to wave its white marble hand, as if pleased the Queen's midday parade won't block shipping lanes. A bronze serving cart squeaks forward, laden with platters so picturesque you half expect a painter to spring out of the hold. There are skewers of spiced goat dotted with emerald pistachios, honey-drizzled dates, and rose-scented melon slices arranged like overlapping shields. But the star of this floating banquet is a low bowl of chilled figs stuffed with crushed peppercorn and draped in wafer-thin slivers of salted fish. A flavour profile one chef swears tastes like sunrise remembering last night's storm. Cleopatra pops a fig into her mouth and murmurs, "Thunder never tasted so sweet." Did you know her flagship, the Thalamagos, reputedly carried a miniature garden of citrus trees to perfume the air on long voyages? Today's lunch barge is humbler, yet rosemary hedges in clay pots line the rail, releasing grassy perfume whenever the hull kisses a ripple. Dolphins surface alongside, curving silver bellies through sun-spattered ripples. Sailors clap 3 times. The dolphins respond with a synchronized leap, splashing the leopard, who retaliates with a scandalized hiss. Cleopatra laughs, a clear bell of a sound that makes every oar stall a beat in admiration. She orders a steward to toss a handful of shrimp overboard as thanks. The dolphins dart for them like living punctuation marks, then vanish, mission complete. The Queen reclines onto cushions, patting the space beside her. You sit, knees creaking like ancient hinges, while she scrolls through a clay tablet's new messages etched in wet stylus. Between bites of goat skewer, she drafts verbal replies for couriers, yes to the poet seeking patronage, maybe to the Sicilian shipbuilder with innovative hull coatings, and an utterly unqualified no to a Macedonian noble demanding a private audience to discuss destiny. You record her decisions on wax, praying your shorthand survives boat sway. Mid-conversation, she reaches for a jug of pomegranate mint sherbet, pours 2 alabaster cups, and pushes one toward you. It's bracing, sweet, and so cold your teeth hum. Hydration, my silent historian, she says. Rivers and writers dry out if ignored. You nod, careful not to dribble down your tunic. If court fashion is any gauge, pomegranate stains rank just below diplomatic incidents. A faint thump signals the arrival of entertainment. 2 lute players and a storyteller from Cyrene, whose sandaled feet never leave the cadence of the deck. He launches into a tale of Poseidon challenging Nile crocodiles to a swimming race. Cleopatra listens, amused, correcting one geographical error mid-verse. The storyteller adapts without missing tempo, proof that in Egypt, Even myths keep revision notes handy. As the barge rounds a bend lined with papyrus marshes, a flotilla of reed boats appears, fisherfolk tossing nets, children waving bunches of white lotus. Cleopatra rises and waves back, wrists flicking like water birds. Nets flash overhead, showering tiny silver fish into baskets. A boy paddles close enough to shout, "Strong floods this year, great one." She responds, "Then strong stomachs for winter." The boy whoops. His mother bows so low she nearly tips the canoe. Lunch drifts into that languid post-meal slowness where time itself seems to recline on cushions. Cleopatra uses the lull to quiz you about the Macedonian ballista diagrams now tucked in your satchel. She sketches corrections in goat grease on a fig leaf, declaring that torsion strength might improve if sinew bundles soak in cedar oil first. Her ability to pivot from dessert to siege physics would stun most modern boardrooms. Yet here it feels as natural as wind on sailcloth. A gentle bump. Oars shipped hastily, signals mooring at a lotus-choked cove. Two servants ease a filigreed canopy into place, dimming the noon glare to a dreamy green gold. Cleopatra closes her eyes, inhaling water lily musk, and murmurs about how Thoth once wrote wisdom on lotus petals for those patient enough to read reflections. You suspect the remark doubles as advice. Slow down or risk skimming truths like careless stones. The leopard chooses this tranquil window to leap onto your lap. Its fur releases a wild, dusty scent, and its weight surprises you, muscle and lazy menace nestled atop your quaking thighs. Cleopatra smirks. Earned its trust, have you? Or maybe you just smell like lunch. You hold perfectly still until the cat tires of the experiment and stalks off in search of shade. Across the water, cymbals shimmer. Temple musicians rehearsing for some evening rite you'll likely stumble into after sunset. Cleopatra stands and surveys the city skyline. Lighthouse spire, library dome, smoke threads from bakeries. Every bite we've had today, she muses, crossed that skyline first. Grain baked in those ovens. Salt sailed past that tower. Pepper recorded in that library. Her hand traces an invisible supply web glimmering above the rooftops. Even in repose, she sees shipping manifests in clouds. The barge crew readies for return, rolling up awnings and stowing cushions. A steward presents a silver hand basin. Cleopatra rinses sticky fingers, flicking droplets into Nile currents. A quick, satisfied nod cues the oarsman. You take one last gulp of sherbet, watching marsh reeds bow as the hull glides away. Alexandria grows larger once more, its midday bustle sharpening into view. Gulls circle fish markets, and the harbour quays wink with bronze anchor chains. Cleopatra smooths her turquoise linen, already recalibrating to palace tempo. She turns, eyes glittering with a mischievous promise. "Now," she says, "about that little lab of resins and glass beakers. Shall we light things on fire?" You brace yourself. Lunch restored energy, but alchemy will test nerves. The leopard flicks its ears in agreement. Or hunger, hard to tell. Either way, the barge kisses the quay and the queen steps ashore, appetite shifting from figs to formulas in the span of a heartbeat. The leopard trots ahead, tail flagging like a torch, as Cleopatra guides you through a narrow servant stairwell that seems to drop straight into the palace's limestone belly. Scents swing from baked bread comfort to something sharper, pine resin, singed myrrh. A metallic tang you recognize from dagger hilts. A hidden copper door glimmers at the corridor's end. Two guards unbolt it, and warm orange light washes over you as if the sun decided to set indoors. Inside, the alchemy chamber feels part kitchen, part battlefield. Bronze braziers roar beneath glass retorts shaped like fantastical sea creatures. Shelves sag under stoppered jars of powders so brightly coloured they could repaint the rainbow, while cages of dried herbs dangle overhead like upside-down forests. Cleopatra slips a linen apron over her turquoise dress, then snaps soft leather gloves onto her fingers with the same precision she once reserved for welcoming senators. "Time to turn gossip into chemistry," she says, tying back her braids. She gestures for you to wheel forward a cedar chest marked with a double cobra seal. The lid creaks open to reveal vials of translucent venom, asp, viper, an obscure Libyan serpent no larger than a shoelace. Nearby rests a sealed pot of frankincense tears, nuggets of labdanum, and a satchel of saffron so expensive each thread might outbid a minor duke. The queen selects ingredients like a poet choosing adjectives, sparingly, but with world-altering intent. You stoke the brazier until charcoal glows ember red. Cleopatra sets a copper alembic on the grate and tips in a finger-width of Nile water mixed with date wine. She crushes a sliver of labdanum between agate mortar and pestle. The resin releases a syrupy aroma that sticks to your lungs like caramel, and scrapes it into the alembic's belly. Next comes a single drop of asp venom, delivered via a hollow silver needle. It sizzles, producing a bead of vapour that curls into the shape of a serpent before vanishing. She winks. Science needs drama to stay awake. Did you know Cleopatra is credited with early cold cream recipes? She blended fresh water, beeswax, and aromatic oils to remove coal without scratching skin, a formula echoed in modern moisturizers. You spot a clay pot labeled Milk of Roses on her bench and realize the skincare industry owes royalties to this very room. Condensation begins to dance up the alembic's neck, spiraling toward a glass coil chilled by trickling fountain water. The leopard observes, ears swiveling, clearly hoping for a more edible experiment. Cleopatra shoos it with a smile, then asks you to fetch a palm leaf ledger. Each page documents trials, some crossed out in red, others circled with exclamation points. One entry reads, Venom Myrrh Tonic. Success. Sparrow sample survived, gained vigor. You decide not to inquire what constitutes vigor in a sparrow. While vapor drips into a crystalline cup, Cleopatra turns to a side table, bearing slices of goat liver. Ethical boundaries here are as fluid as the distillates. She paints one slice with a fresh batch of green resin. Another remains untouched for control. Both go into a wire cage containing 2 scorpions. She watches, humming a lullaby that once floated over Nile nurseries. Minutes later, the treated liver sits ignored, while the scorpions feast on the plain cut. Repellent confirmed, she notes. You add, for frontier troops, in the margin, and she nods. Mosquitoes aren't the only bite worth deterring. Historians still argue whether her famed pearl in vinegar stunt was genuine chemistry or show pony theatrics, she muses, retrieving a modest freshwater pearl from a pouch. She drops it into a goblet of warmed vinegar. Instead of dissolving instantly as the legend promised, the pearl merely fizzes, shedding a thin coat like an embarrassed onion. Cleopatra quirks an eyebrow. Better stick with negotiation, Jules, she sighs, fishing out the shrunken bead and flicking it into a tray labelled myth-busting. A servant enters, carrying a sealed letter, wax still smoking. News of desert raiders planning night strikes reaches her between stirrings of the alembic. Without missing a beat, she dictates orders for glow-in-the-dark resin torches, illuminated compound number 34 from last week's experiments, to be supplied to patrols. Strategy, chemistry, logistics, all ingredients in the same pot, stirred by one relentless spoon. Steam hisses. Distilled liquid now half fills the receiving flask, tinted pale gold like filtered dawn. Cleopatra uncorks it, wafts vapour toward her nose, then dabs a single drop on the inside of her wrist. She waits, counting heartbeats, before smiling. Subtle warmth, no sting, promising. She motions for you to offer your arm. You hesitate, flashbacks of scorpions and pearls, but comply. The droplet feels cool, then gently electric, like the tingle after fresh mint. She predicts it will banish fatigue without the jitters of excessive coffee cherries. A soldier, awake and calm, wins twice, she states. In one corner, copper beakers bubble with a thick magenta syrup, her latest perfume base. She flicks in powdered cinnamon, recalling those slippery marble corridors scented after sunrise. A quick stir releases an aroma equal parts spice market and midnight orchard. She fills a small glass ampule, sealing it with beeswax, and tucks it into your satchel. Evidence that today wasn't all venom, she chuckles. The session closes with cleanup. Spent charcoal raked into sand buckets, glassware plunged into basins of rosewater. The leopard finally gets its reward, a strip of jerky infused with catnip. Purring echoes against stone, blending oddly with the chamber's alchemical size. As torches dim, Cleopatra removes her gloves, flexing fingers now faintly stained by saffron yellow. She regards the racks of cooling flasks, some shimmering like trapped dawn, others dark as secrets, and you swear she's reading constellations in their reflections. All politics begins as compounds, she whispers. Stir, heat, observe. Results appear, sometimes as policy, sometimes as perfume. She extinguishes the brazier, and the room exhales one final plume of fragrant steam. The copper door swings open, revealing a hallway washed in late afternoon light. Beyond it lies a map room where generals pace and grain clerks tally, but first, fresh water to rinse toxin dust from wrists. You follow her out, pulse steady yet brain humming like the alembic coil, carrying a satchel now heavier with scent and strategy. Behind you, the cooling flasks glow softly in the gloom, tiny suns waiting to be unleashed on battlefields, banquet halls, or beauty salons, wherever a queen sees leverage. Outside, shadows lengthen like spear shafts across courtyard stones. A breeze lifts, spiced with both harbour brine and lingering labdanum, reminding you that Alexandria itself is an enormous retort, distilling sunrise, commerce and ambition into something the world will breathe for centuries. Cleopatra inhales, smiles at the horizon where ships' masts line up like quills, and announces, "Now, maps. Fire to parchment, venom to diplomacy, the next experiment begins." Sun-drunk corridors funnel you towards the strategy hall, a high-ceiling vault where papyrus maps drape the walls like enormous, half-finished board games. Bronze oil lamps bob from chains, their flames trembling in the cross-draft that smells of parchment, sweat, and just a ghost of labdanum from your alchemical detour. Cleopatra strides ahead, rolling her shoulders as though shrugging off the weight of 6 prior hours and gearing up for the next 6. You feel the same knot in your spine that sailors get when coastline vanishes and open sea takes over. A long cedar table dominates the centre, scarred by compass points and peppered with carnelian weights shaped like jackals, hippos, and tiny triremes. Generals cluster at one end, grain officials at the other, and in between hover a pair of accountants who count everything twice, including breaths. Cleopatra takes her place near the midpoint, exactly where trade routes intersect war plans naturally, then motions for you to unroll the newest harbour chart. Its edges crackle as you smooth it flat, revealing a tangle of blue ink channels snaking into the delta like veins under pale skin. "Let's begin with bread," she announces, tapping a spot where the Nile forks north of Memphis. A scribe snaps to attention. Cleopatra outlines a 3-convoy rotation. Phaeum harvests sail first, followed by Cyrenian surplus, with Pontic barley as insurance ballast. Jackal weights lock those routes in place. She swivels to the generals. "If pirates nibble at my grain, they'll taste something spicier than wheat." Cue ripple of nervous laughter. Your fingers tighten on a jackal figurine. Earlier resin torches and scorpion trials suddenly feel like appetizers for this main course. General Achilles illustrates coastal defences with ebony rods laid along Egypt's north rim. He proposes extra archers stationed on marsh islets. Cleopatra counters, archers, yes, but cross-practice them as oarsmen so watchposts can redeploy fast when desert raiders pivot seaward. You watch her reconfigure rod positions like a woman rearranging hairpins. Practical, elegant, lethal if stepped on. Across the table, a harbour engineer named Demetrius unveils a parchment bearing your morning's collapsible ballista sketch, now expanded into a full schematic with notation in crimson ink. He suggests mounting 2 prototypes atop the lighthouse's 2nd tier. Cleopatra nods, but instructs he anchor them on swivelling platforms so they can pivot from pirate deterrent to ceremonial fireworks on festival days, purely to keep morale lively. Demetrius blinks, scribbles a note, "Ha works?" apparently out of Greek vocabulary, then keeps quiet. A runner arrives, breathless, carrying shell-stamped tablets from Cypriot merchants. Rumour of a Phoenician fleet scouting new routes south of Crete. Cleopatra reads, lips pursed. She plucks the tiny hippo weight from the board and places it well outside official shipping lanes. An unspoken command to launch a decoy convoy, bait in the water to measure Phoenician curiosity. You add a margin memo, hippo equals honey trap. The generals exchange side-eye. Even seasoned soldiers know someone will draw the straw labelled, sail near pirates while looking delicious. Did you know Egyptian scribes sometimes soaked papyrus in cedar oil brine to make it semi-waterproof for naval maps? One such chart survives today with tide marks still visible. Proof that Cleopatra's planners literally tested directions under splashing waves before trusting sailors' lives to them. You run a finger over the map now and almost feel a waxy resistance, perhaps modern varnish, perhaps original cedar ghost. Midway through a heated debate about lighthouse signal colours, Cleopatra pauses, glances skyward through an oculus, and notes the sun's angle. She calls for refreshment. Carafes of cool barley water appear, along with dishes of salted almonds, spiked with cumin. The accountants fold their tablets long enough to sip. One chokes slightly on a cumin pod, which Cleopatra pretends not to notice. Hydration restored, discussion pivots to alliances. She produces a sealed envelope bearing a wax griffin from a Galatian chieftain rumoured to respect nothing but thunder and cash. The letter offers cavalry contracts at premium rates. Cleopatra thinks aloud. Galatian horses are nimble, but their riders drink more wine than Nile fishermen. Her compromise: hire half their contingent, pay in equal parts silver and Alexandria's best amphorae, generous enough to keep them loyal, but sober only by rationing. You pen the deal draft. The accountants fret about amphora counts. Charts begin to overlap like gossip columns. One parchment shows Syrian grain warehouses, another outlines Lycian harbour dowries, while a third illustrates star positions predicting favourable sailing windows. Callimachus slipped that in during lunch. Cleopatra layers them, transparent logic shifting underneath, until trade, tide, and troop timings fall into harmonic alignment that makes even the accountants exhale admiration. She seals the moment by sliding the pearl vinegar mythbust bead across the table toward Achilles. A reminder, she smirks. Not all legends swallow overnight. The general pockets it with an embarrassed grin. You realize history may remember more trinkets than treaties, but Cleopatra turns both into leverage. A sudden hush. A messenger from the frontier, cloak dusty, enters and kneels. He reports minor skirmishes quelled by those glow-resin torches, bandits scattered at the eerie sight of green-flamed spears gliding through darkness. Applause ripples. Cleopatra throws you a glance, equal parts triumph and told you so. The leopard, reclining by an open arch, yawns, unimpressed by military innovation, unless it smells fishy. Final tasks cascade, wage allocations written on ostraca shards, courier pigeons tagged, bronze seals pressed into wax, still faintly warm. Cleopatra surveys the mosaic of paperweights and rods one more time, then lifts a carnelian trireme and spins it on its keel. Strategy completed, she declares, for now. She leaves the model balanced upright, daring gravity to disagree. It doesn't. The hall exhales. Generals collect rods, scribes scoop tablets, accountants tally emptier bowls of almonds. Cleopatra brushes cumin powder from her fingers and turns toward the sunset-pink corridor. Procession hour, she sighs. Next on the outline, lotus petals and cheering crowds. As you roll maps, night drums echo faintly from the city, priestly rehearsals or merchants singing prophet songs. Alexandria rarely sits quiet. You glance at the empty hippo weight, temporarily exiled beyond the map border, and wonder whose ship will play lure in tomorrow's sea theatre. Then you remember the Queen's earlier advice. Slow down to read the lotus reflections. You give the hippo a respectful nod. Bait has its own courage. Satchel secure, you follow Cleopatra out. The leopard pads beside you like an old comrade, tail brushing your calf. Politics may boil in marble halls, but strategy distills here, amid parchment fog and cumin dust. Outside, the last sliver of sun ignites the lighthouse windows, and you realize the world's most powerful queen has 8 more hours of daylight ambition packed into 3. Better tighten those sandals again. Lotus petals are notoriously slippery. The evening breeze glides through palace arches, shaking torch flames into tiny suns, as Cleopatra exchanges her resin-stained apron for a gauzy indigo shawl. You find yourself plucking stray cumin seeds from your tunic, evidence of the strategy hall's rations, while attendants arrange the queen's pleated train so it fans behind her like twilight itself, deciding to follow orders. Trumpets, shaped like lotus buds, release a mellow call, summoning the city to witness her sunset procession. Out in the western colonnade, polished limestone columns blush rosy gold as the last light skims their fluted edges. Alexandria's heartbeat gathers below, vendors shuttering stalls, children clambering onto fathers' shoulders, Roman merchants pretending not to jostle for prime viewing. A eunuch lowers a casket of fresh lotus petals into your arms. Its perfume swirls up, sweet and watery, masking the more practical aroma of melted lamp oil. Forward you step, just behind Cleopatra's right shoulder, while musicians arrange themselves in a tapered V formation. Thin silver clarinets trill a scale that sounds like birds learning to whistle in slow motion. Frame drums answer with a heartbeat cadence. The leopard stalks beside them, tail flicking in time, unofficial conductor of the percussion section. Down marble steps, you emerge onto the Royal Avenue. The thoroughfare paved in black basalt, shot through with quartz veins that catch sunset like scattered embers. Citizens erupt in cheers. Some wave papyrus slips, petitions hoping to be caught mid-air. Others simply raise clay cups of barley beer in toasts they'll barely remember. Cleopatra's gaze sweeps the crowd, noting gaps where fishmongers left early or philosophers stayed behind to debate something weightier than spectacle. A line of torchbearers lights your route. They wear hooded cloaks, dyed the same ceremonial indigo as Cleopatra's shawl, giving the illusion of a living ribbon unspooling ahead. Every 20 paces, an overseer scatters a handful of lotus petals onto the stone. You follow their fluttering descent, pink and white confetti pirouetting until crushed beneath sandal and hoof, and suddenly recall the hippo map token, exiled beyond trade routes. Even here, the queen seeds the ground with symbols, soft flowers cushioning hard ambitions. Midway down the avenue, a delegation of tax clerks kneels, ledgers open atop polished knees. They chant projections. Olive yields up 6%, linen exports chasing winter demand, pearl fisheries stable after last month's storm. Cleopatra listens without halting, replying with gestures. A nod for approval, a palm twist for adjustment, a quirked eyebrow that sends one unlucky clerk scrambling to recalculate before she parcels. Clarinets never miss a beat, and neither does fiscal panic. Dusk deepens and braziers along the street ignite, fueled by the same green-tinged resin perfected in the alchemy chamber. Flames shimmer turquoise, casting Cleopatra's silhouette against painted porticos like a walking hieroglyph. Did you know Egyptians sometimes coloured ceremonial fire with copper filings, believing the rare hue bridged mortal eyes to divine realms? Tonight the trick doubles as both celestial homage and subtle PR stunt. Word will spread that Alexandria's queen commands colours unseen in Rome's dull torches. Crowds part for a troupe of acrobats cartwheeling ahead, feet slapping basalt like playful drums. Cleopatra smiles, remembering perhaps childhood palace halls echoing with similar antics. Beside you, the leopard crouches, deciding whether tumbling humans constitute prey or entertainment. Ultimately it yawns, choosing regal indifference. As the procession nears the temple of Serapis, incense smoke thickens, curling into the cooler night air. Priests stand ready with bronze censers, yet Cleopatra signals them to wait. Tonight, she passes without formal stop, a silent promise that sunrise prayers already sealed the days packed with gods. Instead, she steps to a small fountain fed by an underground aqueduct. She dips fingers in, then flicks droplets toward the crowd. Children shriek with delight. Mothers reach forward with clay cups to catch even a splash, Somewhere behind you a voice whispers, "Good flood omen," and coins clink into a beggar's bowl. The economy circulates in water droplets now. The clarinet line shifts key, minor to major, as the avenue widens into the Grand Plaza. Torchlight meets open sky, where the first star pricks the firmament right above the lighthouse capstone. Cleopatra tilts her head, gauging wind off the harbour, maybe measuring whether tomorrow's decoy convoy will sail smoothly or fight an offshore chop. Historians still argue whether these sunset walks were spontaneous acts of public bonding or meticulously choreographed exercises in soft power, you muse. But the debate feels moot when you see a fishmonger's wife wipe tears because the Queen returned her smile. Whatever the motive, the result is unmistakably human. In the plaza's centre waits a low stone platform ringed by musicians. As Cleopatra ascends, drum beats slow to a meditative pulse, and oiled torches cast ripples of emerald gold across her shawl. Petal bearers empty the final baskets. Lotus confetti swirls in updrafts, catching lamplight like snowfall. The crowd hushes. Cleopatra speaks. Not a proclamation, just a gentle greeting that crosses languages with deliberate pauses. She thanks dock workers for labouring through last night's freight surge, praises scribes who copied harbour licenses faster than pirates could forge them, and reassures farmers that grain ferries glide even as stars climb. She closes by raising a single lotus bloom heavenward. A breeze plucks it free, lofting the flower until it rests against the inky sky like a new constellation. Applause rolls outward, gentle at first, then swelling into steady thunder that bounces off library walls and temple colonnades. You breathe in the mingled scents of lotus, copper resin, and street-side cumin stew, the city itself applauding with every aroma it owns. Cleopatra descends, torchlight catching the faint saffron stain on her fingers, reminder of poisons brewed beneath palace steps. Sweet petals, sharp science, balanced in one steady hand. A servant offers a polished bronze mirror. She checks coal lines, satisfied they've survived wind and humidity. Behind you, musicians segue into a lilting dance rhythm. Young couples step forward, swirling beneath lanterns strung between columns. Vendors reopen kettles of honey-fried dough, capitalizing on the feel-good afterglow. The leopard, sensing no further royal duties, slinks toward a stall smelling suspiciously of grilled fish skin. Cleopatra taps your elbow. "Banquet hour," she murmurs. Somewhere inside palace walls, torches are being trimmed, goblets lined along marble credenzas, philosophers sharpening wits and grudges for the evening's debate. You nod, shifting the half-emptied lotus basket to your opposite hip. The petal's sticky perfume clings to your skin, promising you'll dream of water gardens long after this day ends. You and the Queen slip back through the now familiar colonnade, drums fading behind you, stars blooming ahead. Alexandria exhales, parade concluded, yet its pulse quickens anew for nighttime intrigues. Lotus petals crunch underfoot, a fragrant carpet leading toward banquet halls where honeyed wine will lubricate both friendship and betrayal. Better tighten sandals yet again. Torches may flicker green, but politics burns its own colour. The palace banquet hall unfurls like a theatre set, pre-lit for scandal. Torch racks flicker saffron light across barrel-vaulted ceilings painted with constellations. Long cedar tables gleam under fresh beeswax polish, and bronze incense braziers puff cinnamon clouds that promise comfort while masking the tense musk of too many egos in one marble box. You arrive by Cleopatra's side, still dusted with stray lotus petals from the procession, and instantly feel the social currents tugging at you. Philosophers eddying near the wine jugs, generals clustering like storm clouds around the roast boar, poets darting everywhere fishing for metaphors and patronage. Servants glide through the throng balancing silver platters of honeyed quail and pomegranate-glazed eggplant. But the real feast tonight is gossip. Cleopatra claims the central couch, half reclining on embroidered cushions the colour of low-tide sky, then waves for musicians to strike a slower tempo. Lyres shimmer. Frame drums throb soft as distant surf. The leopard coils beneath her seat, yellow eyes slitting in satisfaction. Tables this warm promise a steady fallout of meat trimmings. You accept a shallow chalice of date wine perfumed with rosewater. Its rim is warm from the bearer's hurried fingers. Across the table, the mathematician Aristian sketches geometric proofs in spilled wine with his dagger tip, while a stoic philosopher beside him counts syllables on knuckles to verify that an impromptu ode retains proper meter. Farther down, the Roman tribune from the afternoon audience reappears, cheeks flushed, laughing too loudly at the Cappadocian envoy's hawk escape recap, no doubt pretending the bird's flight was always symbolic tribute to Rome's open skies. Cleopatra notices, lips quirking, but lets the theatrics simmer. First course arrives, cold cucumber soup thick with garlic and dill, poured into lapis-lined bowls. Did you know the palace kitchens store blocks of winter ice dragged from Sinai's mountaintops, wrapped in sawdust and hidden in deep cisterns, so summer soups can arrive frosty? The chill hits your teeth like playful hailstones, blending oddly with torch heat licking your shins. Halfway through the soup, a hush rolls down the tables. Queen Arsinoe, Cleopatra's once rebellious sister, now nominal guest, glides in with a contingent of stone-jawed attendants. She offers the barest inclination of her head, accepting a seat uncomfortably close to your own. Conversation jitters, then splinters into rapid mini-dialogues as diners recalculate alliances on the fly. Cleopatra lifts her chalice, toasts familial constellations that guide us all, and the hall exhales, unsure if that was blessing or disguised threat. A troupe of dancers enters, each wearing gilded ibis masks and trailing ribbons lit from within by tiny oil wicks, a luminous swirl of bird spirits. Their slow pivot around the tables acts as subtle crowd control, repositioning rivals so they can watch each other across a ribbon curtain. You spy the Roman tribune trying to snag a dancer's sleeve to flirt, but the mask's cold gold stare shuts him down. Even entertainment tonight answers only to Cleopatra's tempo. Second course, platters of spiced lamb wrapped in grape leaves, carried in on swords repurposed as skewers. The scent of cumin and coriander knots in the air with burnt cedar from the hearth, a fragrance somewhere between caravan campfire and temple altar. Poets applaud the presentation, generals judge whether the blades were sharpened beforehand, philosophers debate if the skewers make a statement about war feeding nations or nations feeding war. Cleopatra listens with half an ear, flicking lamb scraps under table where the leopard's sandpaper tongue rasps approval. Mid-banquet the lighting shifts, attendants dim torches to let ceiling constellations glow phosphorescent blue, a trick of crushed malachite dust mixed into the paint. The entire room sighs as if plunged under warm sea. Cleopatra rises, calls for silence, and recounts a sailor's superstition. Every glowing star overhead mirrors one lover lost at sea, guiding ships back to safe shores. She ends by challenging guests to name whom their star might protect. Immediately cups clink as people toast both living spouses and convenient dead ones, each declaration revealing loyalties quicker than any spy. Arsinoe stands, eyes glittering, and names the Pharos lighthouse her guiding star. Steady, impossible to replace. A subtle jab at Cleopatra's new harbour defences? Possibly. Murmurs ripple. Cleopatra only smiles, raises her own cup to innovation and constancy together, and the tension melts just enough for musicians to resume in a major key. Dessert arrives disguised as spectacle. A low brass cauldron emitting violet vapour is wheeled in, lid lifted to release a swirl of chilled grape must that puddles onto icy trays where figs stuffed with pistachio and honey sit like planets in nebula. The vapour skims the floor, tickling sandals. Diners squeal delightedly. You glimpse Cleopatra's saffron-stained fingertips guiding the servant, clearly an encore from the alchemy lab, repurposed to charm the palate and advertise her unseen laboratories. Wine flows, arguments ignite. Two philosophers quarrel over whether the vapour proves the existence of elemental cold fire. A Macedonian captain bets his signet ring that he can extinguish a torch in the mist. He fails. Torch sputters back to life. Ring departs his finger. Cleopatra watches each spark of rivalry like a chess player studying openings. Every raised voice reveals who will need placating tomorrow, and who may become an ally undercut tonight. Suddenly the leopard bolts upright, ears flattened, an amphora at the far table tips, splashing diluted wine onto Arsinoe's hem. Gasps flower. Was it clumsiness or subtle provocation? The Egyptian silence after an accident is a vacuum begging for rumour. But Cleopatra glides forward, rips a strip from her own indigo shawl, and kneels to blot the stain. The gesture appears humble, yet the inverted hierarchy, queen at her sister's feet, jolts the hall, reminding all that Cleopatra choreographs even humility. Arsinoe stiffens, unsure whether to thank or recoil. Tension dissipates under nervous applause, and you note how a splotch of wine just secured political high ground. The musicians shift to a winding lullaby. Guests slow sip, bellies round, eyelids droop. Cleopatra signals servants to circulate date-seed coffee to stave off post-feast torpor. You accept the tiny cup, bitter and smoky, invigorating enough to keep your quill hand steady for tomorrow's memos. Somewhere near the hearth, the Roman tribune finally grows quiet, lulled by coffee or calculation. Poets scatter couplets like breadcrumbs, hoping someone of rank will follow. As final platters are cleared, Cleopatra steps onto a low dais, silhouetted by constellations that still pulse gently overhead. She offers simple thanks for shared bread and collective vigilance, promises dawn announcements about new harbour lighting, those swivel ballista fireworks again, and invites anyone troubled by insomnia to join her shortly on the palace roof for a reading of stars and possibly fancier dessert. Laughter bubbles. Invitations don't get more velvet-gloved than that. The hall begins to empty, cloaks gathered, secrets pocketed. You linger long enough to watch kitchen slaves carve leftovers for city orphanages, a gesture Cleopatra ordered seasons ago because goodwill fills bellies faster than decrees. The leopard, bloated on lamb trimmings, trails you lazily toward the stairwell spiral that leads rooftopward. The night's final act awaits above, where constellations once painted will turn back into questions, and Cleopatra, queen of answers, is already halfway there.
Midnight has slunk over Alexandria like indigo ink spilled across papyrus. Yet here you are, padding up the final marble steps to the rooftop garden, as though bedtime were a rumour from some other kingdom. The city below hums with fading banter, merchants haggling through yawns, sailors laughing over chipped amphorae of leftover wine. But up here the night feels weightless, an untethered scroll waiting for fresh constellations to ink themselves upon it. Cleopatra arrives moments later, shawl traded for a simple linen cloak the colour of moon-washed linen. Saffron dust from the alchemy lab still freckles her fingers, catching torch glow like secret embers. She spreads a woven map beside a shallow reflecting pool where lotus leaves float like tiny rafts adrift in darkness. You sit, the leopard circling once before curling into a purring crescent at your feet, satisfied that rooftop astronomy includes complimentary catnap service. Above, the sky unfurls a mess of stars so vivid they look freshly hammered into place. Cleopatra points to a bright cluster just above Orion's shoulder and asks if you see a falcon, not a hunter. You squint. Suddenly the flecks rearrange into wings, talons, and a curved beak ready to snatch myths whole. Perspective, she whispers, is the sharpest blade. On cue, the lighthouse beacon swivels, sending a white spear of light across harbour waters. It passes through the falcon cluster, momentarily giving the illusion of a bird clutching lightning. Cleopatra grins at the drama, perfectly aware she orchestrated both lighthouse schedule and stargazing hour to sync like this. She unrolls a parchment, Callimachus's latest star chart, weighted at corners with familiar jackal tokens. The ink glistens, still tacky from afternoon edits. Together you compare sky to sketch, noting where reality shrugs off geometry. At one point, she spots a pinprick of light missing from the parchment's southern rim. "A new wanderer," she says, "or perhaps an old one returning." She scratches a temporary mark with charcoal. Did you know royal astronomers kept a night-by-night ledger of such errant lights? And some scholars suggest this database later helped Greek navigators shave weeks off spice routes. The ledger's spine, rumour claims, still smells faintly of Mendesian perfume, as if knowledge itself needed a signature scent. A hush settles. You're hyper-aware of the city sounds drifting upward, distant flute riffs from river barges, the slap of linen sails slowing as oarsmen tie up for dawn markets. Cleopatra sinks onto her elbows, gaze fixed skyward. Historians still argue whether I loved the stars for prophecy or merely for privacy, she murmurs, words escaping in a sigh that fogs the cool night air. Truth is, the sky doesn't care why we stare. It simply shines.
She produces 2 crystal goblets of watered wine cooled in those Sinai ice blocks. Condensation purls along the rims. She taps your glass with hers, a soft clink swallowed by open sky. You sip. Flavors of pomegranate and spearmint drift over your tongue, and feel the day's 1,000 footfalls ease at last. Cleopatra rolls onto her side, propping her head on one hand. Moonlight sculpts her features into marble relief, equal parts queen and night school tutor. I wonder, she muses, how long before that hippo convoy of ours creates its own constellation of rumours. She traces a playful hippo silhouette in midair, finger glowing silver. You chuckle, recalling the jackal and hippo weights now resting somewhere on the strategy table, guardians of tomorrow's decoy dance. Down in the harbour, a gull squeals, night shift, still complaining about leftover fish bones, and Cleopatra grins at the auditory annotation. Conversation pool hops from practical to poetic. She predicts grain price curves by comparing the Pleiades' brightness to last year's ledger. You counter with a joking forecast. If grain gets too pricey, perhaps we'll ferment more figs. She nods solemnly, then snorts a laugh that skips across the roof like pebbles on water. The leopard opens one eye, offended by the disturbance, then promptly resettles. Silence returns, thick and comfortable. A gentle breeze ruffles lotus leaves, ripples on the reflecting pool fracture starlight into shimmering code. Cleopatra watches the fragments and confides. Sometimes I fear our plans are as fragile as those reflections. One gust, and they scatter. You answer by scooping a handful of water, letting droplets fall back in rhythmic plinks. Then we redraw, you say. She nods, satisfied. Advice simple enough to etch on a coin. A shooting star flares, searing a diagonal across the firmament. Cleopatra inhales sharply, closes her eyes and whispers a wish you catch only as the word endure. You sense weight behind that syllable, a queen hoping the day's alliances, perfumes and rescue torches will outlive tomorrow's intrigues. Gradually her breathing slows, eyelids droop. She settles onto her back, cloak spread like a second night sky. Torchbearers at the stairwell know their cue, snuffing flames until only a porcelain sliver of moonlight remains. You lie beside her, shoulders brushing, counting heartbeats with the same diligence earlier spent on supply convoys. Alexandria's murmur fades, replaced by distant surf and a soft leopard snore. Stars wheel overhead, unstoppable as taxis, yet infinitely kinder. The queen, still awake but hovering at the edge of dream, murmurs final instructions. If dawn comes too fast, tell it to wait. I've just started. The rooftop now sinks into a hush so deep it feels like velvet drawn across the senses. From the harbour, only the faintest hush of waves persists, each one softer than the last, as though the sea itself has begun to drowse. Cool night air drifts over your face, carrying hints of lotus and distant cinnamon, yet even those scents begin to blur into a single, gentle sweetness. In the sky, the stars no longer glitter like diamonds. They soften, becoming tiny lanterns wrapped in gauze, their sharp edges rounding away as fatigue settles upon the cosmos. Beside you, Cleopatra's breathing evens, slow inhale, slower exhale, creating a rhythm so steady you can almost float upon it. The leopard's purr melts into that same cadence, a warm, rumbling lullaby stitched through the night. Every tension in your shoulders releases, unstitching stitch by stitch, until even thought feels too heavy to lift. You notice how the marble beneath your back has cooled to the perfect cradle temperature, neither warm nor chill, simply present, simply supportive. Across the reflecting pool, moonlight slides in a lazy ripple, then pauses, as if the moon itself has found a place to rest. The lotus leaves stop swaying. Even the breeze realizes conversation can wait until morning. Down in the city, lanterns wink out one by one, first the dockside taverns, then the bakery embers, until Alexandria's sprawl becomes a gentle silhouette, a sleeping giant at peace.
Your eyelids drift lower, weighted by the soft gravity of calm. Thoughts scatter into pleasant fragments, the scent of Mendesian on linen, the green flare of resin torches, the quiet pride of a jackal weight balanced on a chart. Each fragment settles like a feather on still water, then sinks into dream. You let them go, knowing dawn will reshape them anew, and you welcome the hush that follows. Good night, traveller. Let history keep watch while you rest.